So I had an idea for a movie, and then I remembered something someone at Paramount in New York had said to me when I was a screenwriter. I pitched an idea to her, and she said, "Did you ever think about writing it as a novel first?" You know, kind of with the idea of two streams of income, and at different times in the film business, it's easier to sell an adaptation of a novel, to sell a novel as a property instead of an original screenplay as a property. That was probably one of those times. So I just thought of that in terms of this idea, and it was Sean Rosen, which you've heard a little bit of today, and basically, I don't want to give too much away, because I hope you'll read the books, but Sean, you heard Sean try to get an agent, he tries to get a manager, and finally he comes up with the idea of inventing a manager. So he invents this character called Dan Welch, and he gets him an email address. And when Dan Welch gets in touch with a studio executive and says, "I have this 13-year-old client, it sounds kind of interesting." So they agree to have a meeting with Sean, and Sean's career begins. But he's juggling these two identities, and he like, I think like a lot of us do, he begins to think of a character he created as a real person. So I just started writing. A novel to me was very daunting. It was like, what person will I write in? My screenplays tend to be very spare. I never describe characters. You know, I never give physical descriptions of my characters. It's like, well, I have to do that in a novel. So I just started writing, and I wrote it in first person as Sean, as you heard. And his voice just came to me very, very naturally. I just heard him, and he just never shut up. And so I transcribed, and I wrote it in my spare time. I wrote it on the subway. Whenever I had a little time. No one was waiting for a novel for me. So it was like my fun hobby project. And it's funny. So those of you who write comedy know that, like, if you're laughing, it's working. So it was working for me, and so I finished writing it, and I showed it to my panel of friends and family members, and people liked it again. And then I remembered that I have a friend who's a principal of a middle school in Westchester, and I said, "Would you mind if I came in and read some chapters of this book to your class, to some English classes?" And he said, "Sure. I think it's cool for kids to meet an author." So I came in, and it was very odd. I don't have kids, and I hadn't really been in a school for a really long time, and middle school. It was an up and down time for me, like for most people, and so it was a little frightening, and they brought a couple classes into the auditorium, and I was standing here reading, and there wasn't a lectern in front of me, and these two boys over there were like whispering to each other and laughing, and I'm just like, "Oh shit, is my fly open?" So it was transported back to 7th grade. It wasn't, but the kids really liked the story, and they accepted the character, and they asked questions about it that showed me that they were very engaged in it. So again, I went on an agent search, because by then I had left my theater agent, because they can't, most of my business was international, and they can't really keep track of things there. Just a quick business example. Visiting Mr. Green had like a 2-year tour of Spain that just was very successful, made a lot of money, and the money was getting to me very, very slowly. So between me and the Spanish producer who I'd met, because they brought me over there, that's also a nice thing about being a playwright, is sometimes you get to go to the places where your play is. Between me and the producer, there was my New York agent. There's a specialized international agency in New York that handles overseas productions. There was an agent of mine in Argentina who handles the Spanish language version of my play. There was his person in Spain. There was the Spanish Author Society. And no one could tell me why it was taking, 9 months to get me the money from this performance that had taken place. And they all take a piece of, your, so I license my plays now on my own. I'm not sure it's the best way, but at least I know what's going on. Where was I? Talking about, book agent, yes. So, someone I knew from movies recommended someone, I got the book to them. Someone I knew socially who was an author, he didn't read my book, but he knew Visiting Mr. Green, and he said, I told him what the story was, he said, I know the right agent for you. And so those two agents read it, and they both liked it, so that was very nice. And I decided to go with the friend of the friends, and she really seemed to get the book. But I had written this book for adults, really. I just thought it would be cool for adults to read about a 13-year-old character. But she said, no, it's really a book for, it's a book for kids. Kids are gonna love this book. And she has kids, and she knows that world very well. And I was like, okay, but when you send it out, send it to some adult publishers too, okay? And she said, So she sent it out, and we really got an instant response, and two big publishers wanted it, and that was great because, if two people want anything, so the price went up, and it turned into a 2-book deal, and for a nice amount of money. Now I asked my agents just recently, like, what a normal advance for a book is, and they told me. It's all over the map, but typically, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, one of my agents is here. Like 10,000 to $1 million, or 5,000 to $1 million.
We say no typical.
No typical. Yeah, it really, really depends. It's they said for the high end, it's more likely to be a novel than nonfiction, unless you are, Sully Sullenberger, and you landed the plane and you're writing about your personal experience. Just like a kind of a slam dunk kind of thing. But for someone who had never written a book before, like me, and I guess a lot of us, it's going to be whatever your agent can get, and and it's going to be gut feel based on what they read. So, and in the contracts in books, so it's my advance against, an amount per hardcover book, an amount per paperback book, but most books do not earn back their advance. So your advance is usually what you're going to get for your book. And again, I know a lot of people who write books continuously, and it's not quite a living. They also teach. They also do something else. So it's, but what's great about books for me is I've loved the collaboration with an editor. I didn't know what that was beforehand. I didn't know if I would like it. You know, in theater, you collaborate with the actors and the directors. You have a rehearsal period. You're there, which is great, and it evolves. With an editor, you wrote what you liked, and then you get notes. And the editor I'm working with at Green Willow HarperCollins is very good at giving the kinds of notes I like, which are not specific things, not specific suggestions, but it drags a little here, or can this be funnier? I always appreciate that, because it always can be. So